big announcement for the Sun Belt today. You can also throw the Georgia State announcement in a few weeks ago as well. Just what is the university's response and reaction to the two new additions?
Well, I think we have really good leadership in the conference office right now with Commissioner Benson, and his philosophy has been that we have to, as a conference, be proactive, not reactive. And this all started really on a major scale a couple years ago when Nebraska left the Big 12 to go to the Big 10, and Colorado and Utah went to the Pac-12. And as you know, it's been a musical chairs scenario ever since then. And I know today on the conference call they said I think 25 conferences in the last 5 years have been affected with this. So it's just part of the national landscape, these teams changing conferences. I think to his credit, he's been proactive. He's balanced out our division, so to speak. If FIU were to leave, which they're expected to do, then Georgia State would replace them. And if North Texas leaves, as they're expected to do, then Texas State would replace them, and you'd still maintain that East-West breakdown.
Do you like the additions? They're FCS, obviously, but you've got a got a great market in Atlanta. You have a solid Texas presence, especially if North Texas were to leave. What's your reaction to the actual programs and members that join?
I think they both have a number of positive attributes. I mean, Georgia State obviously is in a great market in Atlanta. They play their football games in the Georgia Dome. Their head coach is Bill Curry, who's obviously been a head coach at Alabama, Kentucky, and Georgia Tech. And their men's basketball program had a higher RPI than all but two Sun Belt Conference teams last year. On the Texas State side, San Marcos their population is around 50,000, very similar to Bowling Green. Their enrollment's actually 34,000, and they have a rising football program. They added on to their football stadium and now can seat 30,000 people. So I think both those programs are on the rise, and I think that's why the commissioner went out to get them now, as opposed to waiting a couple years from now when they would probably have a lot more options.
You mentioned FIU, I mentioned North Texas. They're probably on their way out. Just reaction to those departures and what that could mean moving forward?
Well, I think it's just consistent with what we're seeing nationwide. I mean, every conference in the country basically has been affected by some type of attrition or addition, and that's what the Sun Belt Conference is seeing as well. I think the key is to not look back and procrastinate. The key is to look forward and say, okay, this is what's happened, how can we get better? And I think that's how Commissioner Benson's approaching it.
Fans are obviously looking at this. You have North Texas leaving, you have FIU leaving. There were speculation that Middle Tennessee was a possibility. Mm-hmm. And then obviously fans are wondering, well, is Western looking at it as well? Is it a situation, I mean, how are you guys viewing possibly, how do I want to word it? Not being left out, mm-hmm. but with everyone moving and everything, WKU looks like it's staying still. Is that okay with you guys?
Well, I think a couple things. Sometimes the best moves you make are the ones you don't make. Sometimes you can initially think, hey, it would be better to go to this conference, and that could very well turn out not to be true. What we've decided as an institution is we're always keeping our eyes open and trying to determine what's best for us. And we'll certainly look at any opportunity that we would have that would improve our university and our athletic program. Right now we're in the Sun Belt Conference, and our focus is on making the Sun Belt Conference better and doing whatever we can to actually elevate the Sun Belt Conference.
Were there any discussions at all with Conference USA?
No, we have not had any discussions with them. Our focus has been on trying to improve the Sun Belt Conference and working with Commissioner Benson.
Is it a concern at all that there maybe even wasn't, I guess, an interest that maybe they would, want to bring you guys along with them?
Well, I think if you look at what Conference USA has done, a lot of it's been market-driven. And what they did was they lost SMU, that was in the Dallas market, so North Texas is a natural fit right there in Dallas. And they lost Central Florida in the state of Florida. FIU is a natural fit right there in the state of Florida. These moves are really driven as much by market than they were anything that had happened on the field of play or even in the classroom.
You mentioned market-driven. It's also football-driven
mm-hmm.
as well. North Texas, very solid basketball program the last several years. FIU, hit or miss. The concern about the level of college basketball, or of basketball in the Sun Belt taking a dip as a result of this. You mentioned Georgia State, but is there any concern about the direction that men's basketball is heading in the Sun Belt?
Well, I think a big key for the Sun Belt moving forward with men's basketball is to schedule good. What we need to do as a conference, there were some initiatives put in a couple years ago in terms of non-conference scheduling, And that's what we all need to focus on, and we do it here at Western Kentucky. We do schedule well, but if you have a good non-conference schedule, then your RPI is going to be better, and the better everybody's individual RPIs are, the better the conference RPI is, and then therefore we're much more likely to become more than a one-bid league.
You look at a team like Gonzaga and a Butler, who ironically is moving to the Atlantic 10 today, but those teams that are in conferences that primarily sometimes are a one big league. Gonzaga, West Coasts get 2 and 3 sometimes, but in those leagues where it's a one big league, are you guys okay with being in that position given the way you guys schedule and the way the basketball program has performed?
Well, no, we'd rather not be a one-bid league. We'd rather be a multi-bid league, because that's really a tremendous source of untapped revenue. It's a very fair distribution of revenue in terms of the NCAA tournament. The more games that you play in as a conference, the more money that you get. So we certainly would like to have more than one Sun Belt team make the NCAA tournament, and we certainly would like to see Sun Belt teams advance like we were able to do not only this year, but actually 3 times in recent years we've made it and won games, which certainly helps from every respect, but helps from a revenue aspect as well.
Is there concern that it looks like going after just FCS members is the route, given with all the movement that there, and within the Sun Belt footprint, even Benson acknowledged today that the teams in the FBS are limited right now as far as what they can go after. Is there a concern from the school's point of view that the conference could be diluted with FCS teams who on the field may not have a greater product as an FBS program?
That's a good question. I think we have to fight that perception, and it's interesting really if you look at Conference USA moving forward and you look at the Sun Belt moving forward, Sun Belt schools are actually closer to each other than the Conference USA schools are in terms of the distance to travel. And last year, Sun Belt, if you take the 2012-13 Conference USA moving forward and the 2012, if you take the 2013-14 Conference USA moving forward and the 2013-14 Sun Belt Conference moving forward, and you look at how they did head-to-head, they were actually 8-8 in football, and Conference USA led 24-23 in football. So really, in terms of on the field of play, the future conferences will be virtually identical, and Sun Belt schools are actually closer than Conference USA schools are. So I think there's a lot of positives there. What we'll have to do is educate our fans on these new members so they understand the positives of that, because I think the perception is probably the one hurdle that we'll have to overcome still.
I guess this is unrelated, but is there anything else, any interesting tidbits, information, or anything that you'd be willing to discuss? I'd rather be scheduling, anything like that, or?
Well, we're always looking at ways to improve our schedule. Our men's basketball schedule is almost finished, and we should be able to announce that hopefully early next week. And the nice thing about that is what I can tell you is that, and I don't like jumping ahead a year, but what I can tell you is in 2013-14, our men's basketball home schedule will be great. We'll have Ole Miss in here, Southern Miss, Murray, and a couple other people in addition to our conference schedule. This year we're finishing up some existing relationships that we have. We have IUPUI coming in, and we have Southern Illinois. But I think moving ahead we'll have a very attractive men's basketball schedule and a football schedule as well.
What about returns from the Toppers on Tour? Season tickets were a big push for you guys. Have you noticed anything since the tour has ended? We
have. We visited 5 cities in 10 days. The turnout was excellent at every place that we went. The biggest difference this year is in the past we did all those tour stops in June, and then we really didn't do a lot of follow-up. Well, this year we did all those tour stops in April, and it's just the beginning. It's not the only step, it's just the first step. And those areas that we went to for the tour stops are areas that we have to do a much better job of cultivating in terms of getting people to buy tickets from those areas, joining the Hilltopper Athletic Foundation. We will be spending a lot of time in Glasgow, Owensboro, Elizabethtown, Louisville, Nashville, moving forward. It's just really the beginning for what we do in those areas. And yes, we have noticed a return. We actually had $13,000 in new ticket revenue from football and basketball alone just as a result of those tour stops.